Hello folks, and welcome back to another video where we have steam locomotives challenging steam locomotives. And in today's video we will have a challenger challenging a challenger, which will challenge each other to see which one can challenge the grades the best. And that'll be a wonderful challenge for the railroads to figure out which challenger's got the best challenger. So if that didn't confuse you, because it sure did confuse me, I don't know what will. Anyway folks, in today's video we have another comparison video of two steam locomotives. You all know the rules. And in today's video we will be challenging the Western Pacific M100 Challengers versus the Western Maryland M2 Challengers. The idea of this video came from JS Gaming, so shout out to JS Gaming. And without further ado, let's get to it. Well, these are the Western Pacific Challengers. They are a 4664. They were built by Alco in 1938. However, they are very similar to the Union Pacific Challengers built slightly before these. So they are very similar locomotives. Again, basically a Union Pacific Challenger, but a little different. Most of it is cosmetic differences. But like I said earlier, they're built for the Western Pacific to carry fast freight with a high amount of tractive effort, which means that they have 70-inch drivers with 99,000 pounds of tractive effort, and the engine and tender weigh 991,000 pounds. The locomotives would all be retired by 1952, and by 1953 they were all scrapped, largely due to dieselization. These are the Western Maryland Challengers. They are built by Baldwin Locomotive Works between 1940 and 1941. Numbers 1201 through 1206 were built in 1940, and 1207 through 1212 were built in 1941, making for a grand total of 12 locomotives. They had 95,000 pounds of tractive effort. They weighed a little over 100,000 pounds. They had 69-inch drivers and 260 psi in the boiler. They were used on the Western Maryland for fast freight and were all retired by 1953 and scrapped in 1953, once again largely due to dieselization. Now, which one of these locomotives is better? Well, the answer is there really isn't. See, though one was built by Alco and the other was built by Baldwin, they are actually the same locomotives. You see, they are copycats on patterns. They're the same. They're built off the same patterns. Okay, so that means that they are the same locomotive as the Western Pacific Challenger, and the Western Pacific Challenger is the same thing as the Western Maryland Challenger. These two locomotives are also very, very similar to the Union Pacific Challengers, the Northern Pacific Challengers, the Clinchfield Challengers, and the Delaware and Hudson Challengers, although the Delaware and Hudson Challengers are just weird and we don't want to talk about them. So, back to the Western Maryland and Western Pacific Challengers. Lots of westerns going on here. Anyway, so the locomotives are basically identical. Most of it comes down to cosmetic differences and railroads' preference, mostly in appliances and different things. Which means that things like, for instance, the locomotives have 1-inch difference in the drivers. That could literally come down to the tire size. Alright, they're the same driver centers, I'm sure. So the same engine. They are very similar in tractive effort. However, the Western Pacific Challengers have 4,000 pounds more, which in the grand scheme of things isn't much, but it is something. And that's only because the Western Pacific Challengers have, I think it's like 5 psi more than the Western Maryland Challengers. 265 versus 260. Everything else about these locomotives are basically the same. The Western Maryland Challengers are a little heavier. That can come down to the boilers being built a little different, or even the tenders being a little bit bigger. But overall, the locomotives are identical. So you could argue this. Honestly, we could bring the Clinchfield Challengers and the UP Challengers and every other Challenger into this, because they're basically the same, with the exception of the really cool ones that the UP had, 3985, the 3900 series. But other than that, these are the same locomotive. So now it comes down to preference as far as the cosmetics of the locomotive. Now me personally, my favorite is the Western Pacific Challenger. I like the way the smoke box is done a little bit better in the front of the locomotive. The way the air compressors are set up is nicer. Plus I like the white pinstriping, even though the Western Maryland does have a pretty cool looking tender on the locomotives with the, I don't know what you call that paint job, but it is pretty cool. So I honestly, if I had to pick, the Western Pacific Challenger is the best Challenger because it does have 4,000 pounds of tractive effort more, so I think it wins this match. But they are basically the same locomotive. But anyway, folks, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Once again, a huge shout to JS Gaming for sending in this wonderful request. And as always, folks, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, share the video with your friends and family, and as always, folks, see you on the rails.